Hello, I'm going to be talking about Just Stop Oil in this video. But first I have to say I've been rather offline for a couple of days because I've had relatives visiting from Scotland. Have they gone yet? Kids are so tiring. And one of my horses has gone lame. And just as a matter of interest, a lot of people don't know, a horse was originally a three-toed animal. So it just had these three toes, which here, let's get rid of these two. It had these three toes, which it used to perambulate through the forests with. And then it went out onto the plains and realised it had to get better at running. So the three toes started to fuse into one. And finally, a horse's foot is just that finger, and that nail is the hoof. That's all it's standing on, just that fingernail. And sometimes if there's an injury to the hoof, it develops an abscess, a stone, a sharp stone into the hoof, and then it gets infected, and then the horse becomes a lion's dinner or whatever. That's the way nature sorts things out. But of course nowadays we don't like that to happen. So what you have to do is the farrier has to go excavating into the hoof, open up a hole, drain the abscess, and then it takes weeks to heal up again. And the poor fellow must have been in quite a bit of pain for a while before the abscess got so bad he couldn't stand on his feet, because horses are awfully stoical about pain, really. And they suffer a lot before you realise there's anything seriously wrong in general. So I've had some fussing about with that. So altogether, the past couple of days have been a little bit of a roller coaster ride. Right, let's get back on to Just Stop Oil. That's the personal stuff. Now to business. Right, Just Stop Oil ringleader Roger Hallam is sent to one of UK's toughest prisons. Well, you know what? I want you to just look at this. This is a photo. That's Roger Hallam, by the way, prepossessing fellow, isn't he? That's the front of the prison. Looks pretty grim, isn't it? That's what the inside looks like. I mean, it calls it a bleak environment. Maybe it's just very photogenic, but it doesn't look particularly bleak to me. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. There's a problem when a government imprisons a revolutionary. Generally speaking, that seems to strengthen their case. It makes them into martyrs. Tomatoes. Okay, well, that's English pronunciation. It makes them into patatas. It makes them into martyrs, and they seem to improve from it. They write stuff, and that becomes their manifesto later on. So there is a bit of a problem with this, which we have to be aware of. Okay, the ringleader of Just Stop Oil faces a month behind bars at Wandsworth Prison, which is regularly described as one of the UK's worst jails, after being charged over the M25 protests. For those of you outside the country, they've been climbing onto gantries, the things with the signs on them, that sort of thing. And because of that, the traffic has had to be stopped, and people have been, well, not only seriously inconvenienced, but in situations of life and death. The Just Stop Oil protesters appeared in Westminster Magistrates Court yesterday, charged with plotting to cause mayhem. That's probably not what they were plotting to cause. What was the exact conspiracy to Okay. Suspected leader Roger Hallam was among those to be remanded in custody. He appeared alongside Reverend Tim Hughes, 72, Daniel Shaw, 37, and Darcy Mitchell, 27, and 5 other activists who were charged yesterday with conspiracy to cause a public nuisance. Now, this is one of the problems. They're referred to here as activists. They are not activists, they are revolutionaries. It's not activism here, this is revolutionary stuff. And the problem is that people aren't calling things what they are. We are becoming, as a society, accustomed to not defining things by their correct, well, definitions. So we get this trans person who wins a beauty contest, which is supposed to be for nubile young women. Is it not? That's the whole point about a beauty contest. Fertile young women, basically. And it not only a biological male, but also a particularly unattractive one with a very unattractive figure, even for a male. So, I'm sorry, I'm not intending to insult males. I'm just saying that a masculine figure is not an attractive masculine figure, is not an attractive feminine figure, for obvious reasons of differences of shape. But even as a male, he's not a prepossessing specimen, and yet he is being accepted. Oh, blast, I'm talking about trans people now, so that means I can't put advertising on this video, which you will probably be relieved about, but it does mean I'm working for nothing, basically. So well, all right. I will now say I'm Granniopteryx. I'm on YouTube, Rumble, BitChute and Minds. I let you know when I've uploaded a video on Twitter, Gab and Parler, where I am at Granniopteryx. And if you want to help my channel, you can do so by sharing, by liking, and by subscribing, and on YouTube by checking that your subscription is still going, because they drop subscriptions. And you can also help me financially, buy me a coffee, or one of the other links in the description. Right. Well, yeah, I'm glad I remembered that. Okay, so I'm just saying that we are, as a society, getting into the habit of lying to ourselves. And this is a very bad omen for our society. And here we get newspapers referring to trans people. I'm completely free now, aren't I? Referring to trans people, to trans women. They refer to trans women. They are men. And generally speaking, very badly dressed men. Often very masculine looking shapes. And they referred to in the newspapers as she. I'll find a picture of a chap who was accused of, or I think convicted of kiddie fiddling, and the photograph of him, he was wearing a wig and lipstick and did not look very much like a woman. But it was referred to as she anyway in the newspaper. Now, here we have activists. They're not activists. They are revolutionaries. All this stuff about Just Stop Oil or whatever, that is not it. And they are being funded from somewhere very opaque as well. I mean, they all have high-vis jackets, for instance, which have to be bought. Somebody has to buy them. They had to have climbing equipment to get up that gantry, and that's not cheap, that stuff. Your life depends on it. And the people who make that stuff have to put a lot of research into making sure they get it right. And they charge a lot because they know they can, because they know people pay a lot of money to save their life and limb. Somebody has to pay for all of this. And so this is being paid for by somebody. I don't know who. It could be some foreign power. It could be a country or a group of countries, or somebody in this country, a citizen who is a bit of an anarchist, or maybe a Remoner or something like that. I really don't know. But definitely it has to be paid for. So these people are the agents of somebody who is behind them, who's paying for all of this, and they are revolutionaries. And I do wish that newspapers would not refer to them as activists. It says here, prosecutors, so the police for once have been doing some proper research and detection. Prosecutor Tom Heslop told the court on November the 2nd there was a Zoom meeting between members of Just Stop Oil planning on blocking the M25. So they had to prove that they'd all planned for this and hadn't just come together by accident, just decided that on that one day they were all going to turn up and start climbing gantries and sitting in roads and stuff like that. Well, all right, they've proved it. Members of the group were heard saying if there was anyone at the meeting not prepared to commit, they should leave. I wonder if there was a shark tank that the ones who were leaving got dropped into. Interesting thought. District Judge Nina Tempia sent Hallam's case to Southwark Crown Court, scheduled for December the 6th, along with 4 other suspected senior figures. Just as a matter of interest, once I was talking to an American professor who was visiting in Britain, and he referred to Debenhams, the department store. And I said, no, that's pronounced Debenham. And he sort of threw up his hands and said, well, how am I supposed to know that? So I said, look, in British English, if you could possibly drop as many consonants, if you can drop as many consonants as possible without making the word completely unintelligible, then do that. You're probably going to be right. So this would be pronounced by most Americans as Southwark, I suppose. But over the years, it has eroded in British English, and it's now Southwark, just so you know. Okay. District Judge Nina Tempia sent Hallam's case to Southwark Crown Court, scheduled for December the 6th, along with 4 other suspected senior figures. And this is Extinction Rebellion, and he seems to be involved with Just Stop Oil as well, apparently, which is hardly a surprise. And this is Wandsworth Prison, the bleak environment. I've seen hospitals that look bleaker, frankly, and they're meant to make you feel reasonably good. Hallam of... Now, I don't know how to pronounce that. I'm going to say Walworth, but I'll bet you it's actually pronounced Walworth. Will be anyone from whatever this place is, let me know. Will be staying in the crumbling and overcrowded Wandsworth prison, where Boris Becker stayed for a time earlier this year. What a shame, he could have polished up his tennis skills. Okay, anyway, they're talking about how horrible Wandsworth prison is. I'm talking about how horrible Hallam and his ilk are, so let's just carry on with that. Frida Lurken, the partner of Just Stop Oil activist, revolutionary Roger Hallam, here she is, and this is Darcy Mitchell of Totnes, Devon, charged with causing a public nuisance. He represented himself in the dock. Lawyers say anyone who represents themselves has a fool for a client. Okay. Shaw, who was also charged, worked in adult social services for 10 years before turning to environmental activism. You see, there is a problem here, and he worked in adult social services. It means he saw a lot of the least privileged and the most stepped upon and confused and needy in our society. Obviously, this is a person who really wants to make things better. I'm not suggesting they're evil, I'm suggesting they're fools. When you are looking at the whole society, it may look reasonably well run, and then when you deep dive into a small area of it, you see all sorts of really unpleasant, unhappy, tragic situations. I'm not disputing that. But the trouble happens when you concentrate on that and think that you can find an instant solution to it in one thing or another. Now, this guy obviously felt the pain of disadvantaged people very deeply, and now he's gone into a sort of fanatic mode, and he's decided that environmental activism is the answer. It never is. There is never one answer to social problems. But I do understand that this person is probably a very good-hearted person. But there is a point at which being good-hearted turns into evil, just because you fail to see the bigger picture. Okay, police have launched a significant operation, to identify and arrest climate change protesters suspected of planning reckless and serious motorway disruption as COP27 gets underway. You see, I've had this hanging around for quite a while. So the police are getting to work on climate change protesters. But they're not climate change protesters. They are actually seditionists. Let's call it as it is. The latest arrests follow a preemptive operation to prevent motorway disruption by the Met Police. If only these police were doing this sort of thing instead of policing tweets, I think probably this would never have happened in the first place. All right, so the Met just announced that another 14 people were charged with causing a public nuisance following protests on the M25 yesterday morning. Just Stop Oil published a statement yesterday that said, "This is not a one-day event. Expect us every day and anywhere." Now, just a minute, I saw a tweet about this. Here we are. She made this statement from, as you can see, from a high point above a busy road, probably the M25, and until our demand is met, we will return today, tomorrow, the next day, and every day after that until our demand is met. No new oil and gas in the UK. And they will cause, if we took their ideas, if we put them into operation, there would be a lot of old people dying of hypothermia. But you see, they don't care about that because they have a revolutionary cause to serve. And that's the problem. I was once talking to somebody who wanted to make an area of London completely pedestrian and bike. And I said, look, I have a knee injury. I have several knee injuries actually, and most of the time I can walk quite well. But then sometimes I twist my knee or something, and then it takes weeks to get completely right again. And I really can't walk, not for long distances anyway. And I have to strap up my knee. I mean, a lot of people have knee injuries. It's very common. And I'm pretty fit. And there must be people in a far worse state than me. And I said, you're going to make life very, very difficult for such people. And he looked at me and he just shrugged. He said, well, yeah, that was it. He set that on one side. So Just Stop Oil published a statement yesterday that said this is not a one-day event. This is an act of resistance against a criminal government and their genocidal death project. You see the loaded language here. We're all going to die. This is the way they look at it. Our supporters will be returning today, tomorrow and the next day and the next year, etc., etc. We will not be intimidated by changes in the law. We will not be stopped by private injunctions sought to silence peaceful people. They're not peaceful people. They may not be out there beating old ladies up, but they are causing injury to old ladies and they don't care. So they're not peaceful. Our supporters understand that these are irrelevant when set against mass starvation, slaughter, the loss of our rights, freedoms and communities. Well, they're the ones who are dealing with that. Okay, so that's what I have to say about this. I'm going to be making another video dealing with an interview Sky News had with a Just Stop Oil revolutionary called Indigo Rumbelow, but that'll be probably the next video. Till then, bye. Why not treat yourself or a favoured relative or friend to these magnificent examples of merch? The mugs and t-shirts come in the granniopteryx design or Grambo with a firearm or the more deadly knitting needles. Go to www.granniopteryx.com and whatever platform you're watching this on, please click like, subscribe and share.